Okay, I'm going to show you how to draw this magical scene, break it down into steps that are way easier to follow than you might imagine, so that you can have a go create this and amaze yourself. Okay, so as explained in the intro, I'm going to break this down into steps so that you'll learn about the painting process and techniques as well as about the app that I'm using, Procreate. But that isn't to say you couldn't use a different app on a different tablet and still follow along. Having said that, within the app Procreate, I'm using their default A4 canvas, which is 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. And then in terms of their color profile, I'm using the sRGB code, the one that ends in 2.1. Throughout the whole tutorial, I'm going to be using default brushes that come free with the app Procreate. So as long as you've got an up-to-date version of the app, don't worry, you will have the brushes here, and I will let you know when we get to the point in the tutorial which brush to use. In terms of the colors, I've already pre-selected a color palette that's suitable for this tutorial, and each of the colors, if you go to the value section, has what we call a hexadecimal code associated with it. I've listed all of the codes down in the video description, so you can copy and paste them into this box one at a time and press enter. The color will appear up here, and then you can tap it into the color palette for yourself. Or alternatively, next to the codes in the description is a link that takes you to my Patreon page where you can download the color file for free to save you some time. And Patreon is also the place that you can support this channel and gain access to exclusive content such as extended versions of most of these tutorials. I'd like to say a massive thank you to those people who do support me over at Patreon. It really does make a huge difference, so thank you so much. And if you'd like to support the channel but Patreon really isn't your style, then simply subscribing, giving the video a thumbs up, or even leaving a comment, all of these things really help out the channel in YouTube's algorithm, so thank you for that too. And with all of that said and done, we're going to get started. So the first thing we're going to do is going to rotate the canvas to the portrait orientation. Go to the color circle, first color on the top row. I'm going to drag from that color circle into the center of the canvas and it flood fills the whole canvas. Now, if the colors that appear on your iPad screen look different to the ones that, seem to be appearing on my screen, don't worry, it's just a camera that slightly distorts colors sometimes. As long as you have the color codes or the color palette downloaded, you are using the same colors as me. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer, layer 2, and we're going to go to the second color on the top row. We're going to go in with the airbrushing, soft brush. I'm going to put it up to 30% size. And let's go for maybe 60% strength. Zoom out a little bit. And I'm just going to go around the edges with this color like that. I'm just fill in the bottom as well. We'll also maybe just take off a chunk of it here. So we've almost created like a little kind of half moon shape. Go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we're going to blur that in to about the 40% and deselect. I'm going to go to my layers, create a new layer, layer 3, and I'm going to go in with the organic rainforest brush, tap on it, stroke path, go to the spacing, and then we're going to put it to maybe about 50%. Done. It just opens up the little bits of the brush, so you see little particles of it almost. 2% size, low, maybe about 30% strength, and especially kind of in and around this kind of light area, we're going to start adding some bits of this texture. Let's go a bit higher actually. Let's go for maybe 4%. Can alternate between the different sizes, but we just want to create some texture there in the very background. We don't want any kind of empty areas. Much of this is going to be covered up by other colors, so we don't need to worry. We'll just get some textures in there. Then stay on the same layer, but I'm going to change brush. I'm going to go to the drawing, evolve brush. Now I've done the same thing again, so tap on it, stroke path, spacing at 50%, done. 5% size, maybe about 20% strength. And this is just going to sharpen up some of those textures. You can be a bit more controlled with this one. Put points where you want them. Just in this kind of lightest area, I just want a couple of points of this texture to be a bit clearer. We'll probably use this brush a bit more in some of the darker colors, but yeah, we're just adding it a little bit. And I'll put it up maybe to 40%, maybe just in this lower area. We'll just have some lower lying textures perhaps. Bring it over here, just about 2/3 of the way up. We're just sweeping across with this texture, circle it in. I'm pressing on quite hard with this. So if you press on lightly, you get smaller. You press on more, you get larger shapes. So I'm letting it build up with harder presses, like so. It's about halfway. Go to our layers and create a new layer, layer 4. Go to our colors. Let's go to the third color. We may as well stay on the Evolve brush. Same settings, 5% size, 40% strength. And well, we're just building up some of these textures. That's absolutely fine. And some of it will appear through. We'll notice some of these textures peeking through in places, but for the most part, again, it's probably going to be quite obscured. But just around that kind of third line, bring some of these textures in, avoid the lines. Do it in circular motions, you don't get any lines there. We can allow it to build up in circular clumps. And again, we're going to obscure much of this. We're just building up the texture. I want to keep a kind of real light area here, but we can start to shut down the light in other places. Building up that texture. Although we're going to obscure it with even darker colors, there's nothing wrong with just building it up gradually. Go to our layers, create a new layer, layer 5, and we'll go to the fourth color. Now it's a big change of color this time, and we're going to actually go to the opacity and put it up to 100%, which seems a bit extreme at first, but we can always soften it in. So again, we're still with the Evolve brush, 5% size, but 100% opacity. And I'm going to start up here. I'm going to build in some real blocky forms of trees, maybe just zoom in a little bit. We're only going down to about that point anyway. And we're just shutting down so much of the light, you're really not going to get much of that light color peeking through in this top area. Likewise over here, maybe one or two, but not much. For the most part, it is going to be obscured by foliage. Let's circle this in. Nice big clumps. I really like the boldness of this brush, this texture. It just stops it being too soft in the way that it appears. It gives it a real quality, a really kind of graphic, hard-edged look to the brush, which is quite nice. And we'll come down here. Maybe just allow some bits to be more broken. Separate clump, maybe another sweep of colour coming through in here. And then at this top edge, we'll just do some little taps, little broken sections there at the top of the kind of the bushes, the canopy. Some rounded shapes, but also little broken sections. It will start to pull together and look more like foliage and trees once we start adding some tree trunks, tree branches. At the minute it's a little bit loose, quite expressive. Perhaps we will turn it down, the opacity, maybe to about 40%. Let's put it up a little bit, 6% size. As we come down here, it can kind of soften in. Maybe there's a kind of mist. That just means we lose some of that hard edge as it comes lower down. We can always exaggerate that too, but let's just put it in there and sweep it in like this. We can also go in with the eraser and put the eraser on the drawing Evolve brush, put it to 100% opacity, and well, it needs to be quite small again, so about 5%. And if we feel like we've gone too far in places, well, we can always just remove little sections, reveal more gaps in the foliage as required. Back to the brush, maybe just soften it in over here as well. We've got kind of layers of it fading in and out, like so. Okay, on this layer, we're going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and we're just going to zoom in and I'm going to slide the blur across to about the 3%. Just softens the edges, makes it a little less crisp, which I think works better. And then I'm going to put the alpha lock on this layer. So tapping it, alpha lock. I'm going to go in with the soft brush with an airbrushing, third color on the first row, 15% size, 10% opacity, and I'm just going to do a few sweeps of this just to blend it in like there's a mist, just to soften it in at the bottom. Not all the way to the top, like this. I'm going to go backwards to layer 2, and I'm going to stay with the soft brush with an airbrushing, and I'm going to stay with the third color. And I kind of want to introduce more of this dark color down here at the background as well. So we can just go and anywhere where there's gaps, perhaps turn it down to an appropriate size, maybe 5%. And we can just go and maybe just dampen down the light around these edges. It's still a very low opacity. Let's just be a bit more bold, maybe about 30%. And you can see, we can just trace around areas, shut down some of that really light areas peeking through. We don't want them to be too light. We want the focus of light to be in kind of this area more so. We don't need too much competing light sources and light areas. So we're just going to shut down an increasing amount of that. Really localize it here. That feels a bit more balanced. So again, it's just in this area really now where we've got that lightest of colors. Go to our top layer and create a new layer, layer 6. Go to the 5th color. I'm going to use a combination of brushes. So I'm going to go to the organic rainforest brush. Now I've tapped on that brush, gone to the stroke path, and put it at 50% on the spacing. Done. 3% size, 100% opacity, and then down in these lower areas to about the halfway, maybe just a little bit under the halfway point. In fact, that's a little bit big. Let's put it low on the 3% size. There is quite a bit of variation even within the same percentage. So just zoom out so you can really judge it. And we're going a little bit lower than halfway. We'll do a band of this across. So we'll do a band of that across with the section still remaining in the bottom area. Zoom back in. Then we can just do some bushes and foliage that stick up beyond that point. Maybe just banks up at either side. Circle it in, tap it in, combination. Turn it down, 30% strength, and we can have it softening in places so it's like it's just gradually coming more towards us through the mist. Not everything needs to be bold edged and hard edged. We can have combinations of softer shapes emerging and then more bold forms as well. I think that combination, that mix of the two is going to work well for us. Like so, so that kind of softens a lot of that quite nicely. Then we're going to switch to the drawing evolve brush once more. 100% opacity, 6% size, and we're going to represent foliage that's closer to us now at this point. So therefore it's going to be darker, it's going to be much richer. When we get to this edge, we don't want to obscure all of this, so we're going to start tapping it in. Maybe even turn the brush size down 3% or so. Allow the foliage to become more broken. Play around with the sizes, 4%. And then we want to introduce some of it up here as well. Circle it in. Even higher, 5%. Tap it in. Allow it to be a bit more broken as it comes down. We want to really just, in terms of this foliage up here, keep it more concentrated near the top. But it will come down a bit. We're not stuck with this initial colour that we've put in either. We can use this as a base and we can then adapt and change the colours. We've got this as our base colour. Maybe some patchiness in here. Spreading across. Again, try to keep it in clusters of circular movements. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer on top, layer 7. I'm going to go in with a medium hard brush within airbrushing. And I'm going to stay with the 5th colour. So it's the same as the colours we've just been using. I'm going to do some tree trunks. Try to do it in a fast movement so it doesn't get too wobbled, too wobbly. A bit broader at the base of the tree trunk, obviously. And I've got it at 3% size, 100% opacity. But you can play around with that. I'll just put it down to 2, maybe a couple of thinner ones. Try to do it quick. And if you're not happy with the instant shape that you get, then just go in there and amend it slightly. And then thicken it up at the base if you need to. Maybe I'll put it up again, 3%. Can have trees that run really close to each other in places, split off even. Ones that come in from the side. Turn down again, lower that 2%, maybe ones, branches that come off from them. And some over at this side, 3% again. Maybe we can go all the way from the top, all the way down, another one close to it. Some over at this side. We're just getting a mixture of tree trunks in there. And again, just go in there, broaden it up at the base of the tree, obviously. Just be careful, if you press lightly, you will get a thin or a light opacity of it, so keep the pressure up. Try to be consistent with it. Allow some finer branches to emerge as well. Don't need to go too far with that though. We're going to have it mainly just obscured in the kind of foliage. But you can see a really nice effect emerging without too much effort really now. So I'll just create some back here as well. We can always subdue them. Picking up the base. I can put one or two in that I really plan to just knock further back. But we can put them in there initially. Then we can go to that layer, tap on it and put on the alpha lock. I can go to lighter or darker colours, so I can go backwards to the fourth colour, change to something like the soft brush with an airbrushing, maybe 5% or 4% will do on size, and maybe about 20% strength, so we don't need to go too extreme with it. We can just start subduing some of these, knocking them further back if need be, pushing them back, bringing them forward, or we can go to a darker colour, go to something like the seventh colour, and we can bring one or two of them even further forward. And we can continue to do this throughout, so we don't have to make the final decision on where they sit just yet. We can go back in and darken them later, but it just helps maybe at this point just to push it around a little bit so you know what's coming further forward, what's sitting further back. And there's nothing to stop us adding more later as well. You can see now it reveals a slight untidiness at the bottom and it just abruptly stops at the top, but it doesn't matter because we're going to cover it with foliage anyway. But it just gives us that sense of some further forward and some further back. Go to our layers and create a new layer, layer 8. We're going to move along to the 8th colour. Get some really more vibrant greens in here now at this point. I'm going to go back to the drawing, evolve brush, 5% size, 100% opacity. Let's just zoom in. I'm going to start burying much of this foliage with, like I say, this really nice vibrant green, which might seem a little bit too vivid in places, and that's fine. We're building up layers, we're building up effects. We're going to consume much of this colour with darker, more subdued colours as well. We'll bring it in, tap it in towards the edges. We don't want the big splodges right near the edge. And you can see this is consuming much of that upper part of that tree trunk, which is why we didn't really need to worry too much. It's quite forgiving really, this technique, because you know everything's going to get buried and covered in other textures, so there's lots of opportunities to just disguise anything you don't like. If there's a bit of a tree trunk that isn't working, or you don't like it, then you just cover it up with foliage, and yeah, it's a good way of just disguising things that we've had a problem with. So there's no need to stress, there's no need to worry. Let's just try to enjoy the different stages. So we're adding bits of this green lower down, slightly more foreground down there, either side. Again, we'll go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur. Perhaps we'll just blur it in slightly, maybe just a couple of percent, 2%. Deselect, just softens it a little bit. Perhaps we ought to go back to layer 6. We didn't really do that with that either, did we? So layer 6, adjustments, Gaussian blur. Soften that in a couple of percent as well. Go to our top layer and create a new layer, layer 9. Go to our colours. We're going to use a much darker colour, so we're going to go for the 9th colour. Still with the evolve brush, 5% size, 100% opacity again. And we're going to start just bringing this tone through. Perhaps we could turn it down a little bit actually. Let's go for maybe 60%. That way we're going to get some variation, which is perhaps advantageous. Gives a more layered, more textured look. which is good. Bring it down, smaller taps, smaller clusters as it comes further forward. Put it back up again, maybe 80% strength is a good balance. Tap it in. Bringing this texture much further forward with this colour is much darker, and we'll probably need to go back in and just change the strength and the tone of some of these tree trunks in places too, but we'll get there. Everything in stages, so we'll just add some of this dark texture in here. You can see I'm leaving gaps and leaving just clumps. I want some of those background colours. There's no point putting them in if you're not going to let them show through. So we very much intend to let some of those colours in the background still remain through. Otherwise they won't have any impact at all, and it was a waste of our time. So yeah, leave gaps, do it in clusters, little blobs that don't completely obliterate everything behind. Maybe we can start adding some of that colour down here as well. And again, don't worry about the tree trunks, probably going to bring some of them even further forward. We're just laying down textures. Some of that colour down at either side there. It just helps bring it further forward on the ground as well. Back to our layers and create a new layer, layer 10. And then we have the 10th colour, which is like a green that's just as dark, if not a note darker, but it has a bit more green in it this time, which is really quite a nice colour. So we'll bring that in, certainly the bottom area. Perhaps put it 100%, why not? Bring it down here. We may also bring it across. We're probably going to use a lot of lighter colours to soften that, but we may also bring it down to begin with. Just really helps set the stage for everything else that we're going to do. A few taps of this, just reaching up. I'm trying to decide whether we need much of this up here, maybe just a few bits. I'm going to add some lighter colours in just a moment. So just a few swirls of that. That works quite nicely. Go to our layers, create a new layer, and then, well, we're going to use some more of the greens. We've got greens down here we could use, and we've got greens up here. And we'll go for the first one on the middle row. And then we're just over the top of that dark colour now, bringing in some detail on top. So we have secondary lights now that are bringing into focus, adding highlights and colours as they come further forward. And then we've got even lighter colours. That's very light. So let's go for the third one first. Just a few dapples of that colour around. We don't want to overdo it. And then, well, let's go for that second colour. I'm a bit hesitant of it. I did select it, but there you go. Sometimes you select a colour and then you become a bit nervous of using it. But here and there, maybe not too much on that side. Maybe keep it in one place, minimal amount. That works quite nicely. Probably need to go back to our tree trunks. Let's find that layer. So that was layer 7. Let's go to that layer. Back in with airbrushing. Oops. Airbrushing. Let's go for the medium brush. We need to think about the tones that we've just created. So we don't need the darkest of colours, but let's go to maybe the 7th colour, 2% size. We definitely start bringing some of these further forward. We'll make more sense of them. We probably do need to use darker colours actually, don't we? I think it makes sense. Let's just do it gradually. We'll do it with this colour first. And you can see that we need to address the bottom of the tree trunks, but that's fine. This is just our starting point. Do it in sweeps, we don't need to be tidy. In fact, it helps actually in some of the texture, some of the detail of those tree trunks if we just do it in sweeps rather than doing it too neatly. Let's go for the 9th colour. Let's really go for it in 1 or 2. This one, for example, here. Maybe we'll turn it down from 100 though. We'll put it to about 60% opacity. High on that 2% size, and just bring some streaks of it through that tree trunk. Bringing it further to us. Maybe 1 or 2 here. And just create some variation in distance. Turn it down again, 30% or so, and just couple in that one. Don't want it quite as close as these ones, but you can see it's added to the variation. Okay, I'm going to go to the top couple of layers. I'm going to take layer 11, tap on it and merge down, tap on it and merge down. So we've got now layer 9, which is all those other layers merged with it. We're going to go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and again, we'll zoom in so we can really see its impact. Blur it in 2%. It helps, like that. Now, I'm going to go to the wrench, add, copy canvas, and paste. And it's created a duplication of all of the layers, but flattened it onto one extra image that's on top. Now, you can't really see it until I do something with it. So first of all, I'm going to go to the selection, rectangle, and I'm going to run a rectangle in that bottom section. I'll just zoom out so you can really see it. Along here, consume the whole bottom area, and it's now selected all of that bottom bit, but not the top bit. You can see for the lines. Go to the layer, tap on it, and then clear. You won't notice anything's changed, but something has changed to the thumbnail and to that layer, which means I can go to the transform. You can see now it's only got that top section selected because we cleared that bottom bit, and then we can go to flip, vertical, and we can move it down. We want water reflecting the whole scene. That's what I'm going to do. Before I do that, I'm just going to go to freeform and squash it in slightly, and then move it down again. Let's align it up the best we can, like so. And then we've got a bit of a reflection of everything down here. I'm going to go to the adjustments, the motion blur, and I'm going to slightly blur it to the side, not too much. I don't want it to be quite as clear, so maybe about 10% to the side. It just slightly stops it being crystal clear. Then I'm going to go to my layers, create a new layer on top. I'm going to go in again with the drawing evolve brush, but now I'm going to move to some of these colors. So I'm going to go to the fourth color on the middle row, maybe about 8% size, 100% opacity. And we've got a real nice dark color coming in here that's darker than any of the other colors that we've used so far. Bring it in down here, interrupting just a blob at either side, really. Then I'm going to go to I'm going to skip a color. I'm going to go to the sixth color, same brush, 5% size, but I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to put about 40% strength, zoom in. In fact, I'm going to put it down even further. I'm going to put it down to maybe about 25%. Build it in. I don't want the edges of these textures to be quite sharp, a bit more muted back here. Perhaps you can't just see the sharp edges quite as clearly in the shade. Let it kind of dissipate, fragment out into the shadow. So it's just this top edge of that kind of bush, and a bit more of that. Again, allow it to disappear in the shadow a bit. Go back maybe to the fifth color, and just a few taps of that slightly warmer green in there, but not too much. Okay, so I'm going to create a new layer. I want to darken the reflection in the water. It's too vibrant. I need to just subdue that so that when we add more lights on top, that they'll pop by contrast. So I'm going in with the soft brush with an airbrushing, and I'm going to go to the first color on the bottom row, which is quite a dull color by comparison to anything else. Maybe about 10% size, 20% strength, and we'll start these bottom edges. Just be careful, we don't want to eliminate that bush, but we'll just swirl it in around the side. We can take it all the way across, in fact. And this side, shut down the light. We definitely want to shut down this area. And then all the way up, just generally, in fact, across that area pretty much. We still get the impact of the reflection. Doesn't destroy that, but it does just subdue everything and focuses our attention to the light that's there, which is great. And then we'll have additional lights that will really pop as well. So create a new layer, layer 13. Maybe create a few rocks. So maybe we'll go in with a medium hard brush with an airbrushing. Back to that fourth color on the middle row. And well, we need a nice dark color here. So let's start with maybe 2% size, 100% opacity. We've got a nice flat bottom edge to a rock in the water, perhaps just going off the edge, and then just a more angled look along that top surface. And then increase it higher up on that 2%, just color it in. Turn it down again, 2%, maybe a couple of little stones in here. You can add as many of these as you want. I'm just going to do a few. Go to that, tap on it, put on the alpha lock, and then we've got rock colors down here that we're going to use. The first color on the bottom row again. I'm actually going to go in with the vintage rad brush. I'm going to put it up to maybe 30% size, maybe 40% strength, just at the top edge. Just a sweep of that across, maybe a couple of times. You can see it's created some angles which are quite useful. Again, just try and focus it at the top edge. And we've got brighter colours, maybe the second colour on the bottom row. Try to aim for the top. And then the third colour, maybe reduce it down 10% size. Try to really focus that line. A few taps along the edge. Then we can go to something like the smudge, put the smudge maybe on the vintage brush as well. So vintage rad brush. Let's think about the size, maybe about 20% size, 30% strength, and we can just go in there and push it around a little bit if it feels like it's a little bit too angular. Soften it in. That helps. You can always go in and refine that later, but it's a good start. Go back to layer 12 that was underneath. And go in perhaps with the inking dry ink brush. Go in some of these greens. Let's go for the 6th colour, and we're going to do some items that are just settled on the surface. Maybe some things like lily pads, are just organic matter settled on the surface. So we're doing some slightly sideways shapes, small, large, vary it up a little bit. Just skimming across the top of the water. Let's put it up. Is it 20% size, 100% opacity? Let's put it up even further. 30% size, 100% opacity. Create some more shapes here. Maybe more obviously like lily pads or something. You don't always need to exactly spell out what something is. It's enough sometimes just to do some shapes to suggest at it, and then yeah, your imagination can do the rest. And then we'll take it up here, try to keep that angle. I mean, I've moved the canvas, which might be a bit confusing to watch, so I'll put it straight now so you can see what I'm doing in relation to everything else. And we're taking some of these shapes a little bit further back, allow them to become thinner, so press more lightly, keep that horizontal movement generally, and then as we come down here, press on a bit more. Like so. And that's created some suggestion of things growing on the surface. Perhaps in this area we'll have some grasses, so go in still with that 6th colour, still with the dry ink brush, maybe back down to maybe about 15% size and maybe about 40% strength. Zoom in. Some grasses in here, growing in the kind of shadows. Can work quite nicely. Maybe some down here. I'm going to switch to the organic rainforest brush again. The spacing is still at 50%. Stay with the same colour. 2% size, maybe 80% strength. And we'll just build in some softer colours just to soften that hard edge that's here. Put it in there just as a guide initially, but it's definitely too dark and too hard edged. So we'll go in there and soften it up. All the way across, and some clumps, some different shapes. Perhaps we'll add some rocks in there and grasses and things like that. Build it up at this side too. And that's just generally softened it in, which is quite nice. Go to our top layer, create a new layer, layer 14. Now we've got much more vibrant greens to start using now. So we'll move along to the 7th colour. Still with the rainforest brush, we'll turn it down 2% size, maybe 70% strength. And we're going to start introducing more vibrant colours. Now the reason we've got these vibrant colours is we've got this kind of magical glow coming in that's created from fireflies and just some kind of magical spectacle going on. We don't need to define exactly why. We've got these little points of lights that we're going to introduce. We haven't really introduced them yet, but we're showing some of the impact that it will have to begin with. Some of these lighter greens, just swept through here. Stay on the same layer. Let's go for the 8th colour. Start ramping up that impact. Through this whole area. So it's mainly going to be this area and this water that's going to be affected. Let's go to the 9th colour. Again, probably mainly the centre, and it's going to contrast with the background that's going to really look quite gloomy, quite brooding by comparison. Otherwise, you know, the magical colours don't really work unless you've got that brooding, dark, sombre background to contrast against. 10th colour. Bring some of these colours through. I've just kept it quite loose. What I'm going to do with the smudge, put the smudge on something like the inking, dry ink. 4% size, let's try that, 100% opacity, and then we can go in there and, well, we can introduce grass. Let's put it up actually, let's go for 5% size. We can push around these textures in places. Drag from the lightest of colours, play around, doesn't need to be consistent, all in one place. Shorter grasses across certain areas, longer in others. Take it from the lightest of areas, cut through. Really fast sweeps can help. Disrupt, break up some of this. You don't want to do it across absolutely all of the areas, otherwise it just becomes a bit too monotonous. So just pick and choose which areas. Let's switch to maybe the drawing evolve brush. We'll go in with the 10th colour, 4% size, 25% strength, and well, we can continue to ramp up some of these colours. Similar kind of textures that we've used elsewhere, why not? We don't want to only have one kind of texture, like I'm saying. Build up some of the colours, a bit higher on this side even. And we can take all of that, slide and duplicate it, transform, flip it vertically, and we can bring it down again to reflect in the water. Deselect. We don't want it to be quite that crisp, so again, the adjustments, maybe go for the motion blur to the side, 15% maybe. Deselect. I'm going to tap on the end and just subdue that slightly. I'm going to put it back maybe to about 70%, which allows me to go over it with other more vibrant colours. I don't want to have that be the most vibrant colour. So again, I'm going to create a new layer, layer 16. And well, actually this time we're going to go in with the luminance, the light pen. Let's go for the really most vibrant colour. We've got the 10th colour on the bottom row. Let's go for, let's see our sizes, maybe about 25% size, 60% strength. Well, we're going to have a couple of elements, and you decide what these are going to be, whether they're fireflies, or maybe you don't need to actually spell out exactly what they are. But fireflies is a good kind of starting point, I suppose. I'm just going to do them as little blobs. You don't need to articulate them too much. And they can be in the distance, or they can be closer to us, and more of them. But I'm just going to start peppering them through this whole environment. And then I'm going to do lots of little ones, maybe on this kind of horizon line of sorts. Maybe they're just in the distance, a little bit more there. So I'm allowing a bit of a concentration of smaller dots around this point. It gives the impression that they are just going further back then into the scene. Pepper them through. Don't neglect to give them quite a broad spread across the image. Maybe just a nice concentration of them down here near the water. And I suppose we could have a real concentration of ones that are close to, just give it a slightly neater shape, kind of wings. For the most part, I'm not going to get too bogged down in this, but maybe something that's just a little bit closer, just a hint that perhaps it has more form. Now I'm going to go back to my layers. I'm going to create a new layer on top. I'm going to go back in with the inking dry ink brush. We're going to use some of these other colours. I also go for this one, which is the 8th colour, slightly more subdued actually. 15% size, 40% strength. And then just on the water, we're going to have some of these items, these artifacts that are just reflecting back some of the light, and we don't, perhaps I'll keep it like this, so otherwise we're going to get a slope in there that we didn't mean to. So yeah, here's an example perhaps where you shouldn't rotate it necessarily until you're absolutely sure that everything's at the right angle, the correct angle I should say, not to confuse things even further. So once we feel like we've got the angle, we can go in, move it to an angle that actually you find it easier to add the shapes. Try to keep them a little bit random, you don't want them all completely consistent. Rotate it however suits you, and if you keep it perfectly on its side, well, I guess if you just aim for straight upwards, then you know it's going to be horizontal when you rotate it. If you do it at an angle, then it gets a bit more complicated. I prefer to do it rotated. I find it easier to push lines upwards than I do awkwardly left and right. That's just me, whatever works for you. There's no right and wrong with how you apply marks, it's whatever you find comfortable. I'll move along to some brighter colours. I'm going to go for the 9th colour on the bottom row. And well, we need brighter colours in here generally. Just keep ramping it up. More broken little dashes. And then we can even go in with the 10th colour, why not? Just channel it through the centre. I'm going to create a new layer on top, tap on the N, and scroll down to the Add Blend mode. I'm going to go back to the 8th colour, and I'm going to go in with the airbrushing soft brush, put it up, 10% size, but low, about 5% opacity, and I'm just going to bring some of that glow in here, subdue some of that dark colour, knock it back a little bit, and I think that works quite nicely. Again, zoom in, go to the 10th colour, soft brush still, 2% size, maybe put it up, 30% strength. And again, let's just ramp it up in places. Some of these grasses, we just pepper through some real strong highlights. Some of the reflection down here on the water. Again, some really nice colour. 1 or 2 dashes through here. Taps. Let's think about these rocks. Let's go back to the rocks layer we had on, where were we? Not that layer, we're on layer 13. Tap on it, turn off the alpha lock, back in with the, let's go for the medium brush with an airbrushing, and well, let's go for the first colour on the middle row. No, sorry, the bottom row. 2% size, 30% strength or so. We just need to create a little bit of a shadow, or rather a reflection. Let's go for a dark colour. Let's go for the 4th colour on the middle row, even, and then just slightly create that reflection. Doesn't make sense unless it is somehow reflected into the water. Would look a bit strange. At least just hinted at anyway. It doesn't need to be over the top. Back up to layer 18. These ones that are close to the water, perhaps, we'll go in with the soft brush. We'll go in with the 10th colour. This particular one is close to the water. Let's put up actually 2% size, 20% strength. It's close to the water, it should be reflected in it. Same for this. Turn it up 3%. And then turn it back down, give it a bit of sharpness. Same for this one. That creates quite a nice effect as well. Go to the top, create one more layer. We'll go in with the inking, dry ink brush. Go for a nice dark colour. We'll go maybe for the 10th colour on the top row. 30% size, 100% opacity, and we'll just create some nice grasses Here's a bit of a distraction here in the bottom area. Just changes up the overall canvas and composition quite nicely. And then, well, I'll probably go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur, and blur it in so we get that depth of field look. So it's not quite as sharply in focus. I've done it to about 5%. And that just balances things a little bit better, I think. So I'm going to go back to layer 7. I've turned off the alpha lock. That's where we have the tree trunks. Let's go in with the 7th colour initially, with the medium brush within airbrushing. 2% size, 100% opacity. Let's just join at the bottom of the tree trunk. Looks a bit strange without the base in position. Not that one, that should be further back. Let's leave that one. These ones. And maybe there should be an impact of the light, so we can go to maybe the 8th colour on the bottom row. Turn that brush down to 20% strength. And we can just tap in a little bit of texture up the base of the tree trunk to represent the light impacting. But not much, just a couple of hints. Goes quite a long way. And then this one, it just needs a little bit more texture. So perhaps we'll go for some of the colours down here. We'll go for the 4th colour on the bottom row. 15% opacity. 2% size will do. Just a bit of texture along one edge maybe. Just some ambient light from over here, just impacting it. Maybe again the 8th colour on the bottom row, just some of that magical glow just impacting it as well, but not much. And then that's probably just enough to finish those. I don't like the way that ends, so let's go to the eraser, put it on the soft brush with an airbrushing. 2% size, 50% strength or so, and just have that ending a lot further back. One thing I could do is go back to layer 16. I could go in with the adjustments, and you have to determine whether yours requires this. Go to the adjustments, go to the bloom, and you have a slider to ramp up the glow. I have it without. I'm going to ramp it up a little bit, but not that much. So maybe, definitely not 100, maybe 50%. That's even less, maybe about 20%. Just ramps up the glow a little bit, but it's not too strong, it's not too exaggerated. Okay, I'm going to leave this tutorial here at this point. I hope you've enjoyed following along. Give the video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe. I shall see you back here soon for another tutorial next week. Bye for now.